The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
So when I was growing up, the most famous play-by-play call of all time was considered to be the Russ Hodges call of the home run by Bobby Thompson off Ralph Branca to send the New York Giants to the World Series in 1951. The Giants win the pennant. The Giants win the pennant. Is it possible? Is it possible that 46 years later, the Al Michaels call of the U.S. Olympic hockey team beating the Soviets, do you believe in miracles? Yes, has become the number one call of all time. These things can be debated in bars and sports talk shows forever, but nothing really has stood the test of time like that call. And when we saw what we saw over the weekend, we were reminded of just how incredible that was. The comparisons between the Olympic gold for this team versus the one in 1980, you really can't make them. It was a totally different world. It was a bunch of college kids beating what could have been the best professional team, although they weren't called professionals. They were military people and students, from the Soviets. They were paid professionals. They were paid to be hockey players, and that was their job. And the U.S. won. It was absolutely incredible. This was a nice upset, no question, and a big win, but it does not stand up to the 1980 team. Anyway, to put kind of an exclamation point on it, I think it's important for Al Michaels to tell the stories again. You've heard many of these over the years. Every time we have an Olympics, Al gets trotted out to tell these stories. But, it's kind of like you come in from the cold and you want to warm your hands by the fire. This is something that you want to hear again and again and again. Al Michaels telling the world again about how incredible it was when the 1980 Olympic team won. And he appeared yesterday on the Dan Patrick Show to compare and contrast from 1980 as to what happened over the weekend. And they started with just how inexperienced Al was when he was called to make the Olympic roster, so to speak, for ABC in calling the U.S. hockey games.
How many hockey games had you done prior to the 80 Olympics?
One. 1972. I think I've told you this story about I'm on a staff. Remember, I'm the kid on the staff. It's Mount Rushmore. Howard Cosell, Jim McKay, Keith Jackson, Frank Gifford, Bill Fleming. I'm the kid. So what am I? I wanted speed skating because Eric Heiden was going to be the big star, and he did win the 5 gold medals. But they gave that to Keith Jackson. And they gave me hockey, and I said, I'm thinking Winter Olympics, it's always good to have an indoor sport, right, for starters. So, and I loved hockey, and I was the one guy on that staff. Nobody else had done a game. I had done one game, and I knew what icing and offside were. And that's how I wound up getting that assignment in Lake Placid. How nuts is that?
Yeah, and look, all the football he's done, he's been doing national NFL games for 50 years. He did Monday Night Football on ABC forever, transitioned to NBC, still at it on Prime, and he's back for another year. I think he's going to be 82 next year, and is going to continue to call NFL games. But that one moment in time will forever be his space in history, right? Because I think years from now, when the name Al Michaels comes up, the first thing that will be mentioned is his call, "Do you believe in miracles?" For, when you think of the incredible way that things have changed with television and sports, that call was made for tape delay. We saw that after the game had long finished. It was an afternoon game in Lake Placid. In those days, ABC wasn't going to preempt soap operas for something like an Olympic hockey game. And it was expected that the U.S. was going to get blown out anyway. So what was the point? Put it on tape delay, and once it gets to be like 5-1, then ABC can shift over to ski jumping and other things like that. Nobody really expected much. And we had this incredible game, this incredible victory, and the incredible call by Al Michaels. And now in his 80s, he is always going to be associated with that moment, as he discussed yesterday with Dan Patrick.
How many hockey games had you done prior to the 80 Olympics?
And that is not it. I played that already. This is what I meant to play here. There we go.
People still love the story. It'll resonate, for the rest of my life, clearly, and a lot of other people's lives. But it was just, it could not be replicated. You know that, because that game was so much more than a hockey game. You needed to know nothing at all about hockey or care about hockey. That was all about us and our arch enemy. And we're actually playing with amateurs, and they're playing with, in effect, professionals in our, home country, in a game where somebody asked me what, DraftKings might have had that game at back in 1980, 50-1, 60-1, you name it. It was a massive upset, massive.
But the fact that it wasn't for the gold and the amount of pressure that was now on Team USA, that you can't come this far and you don't win the gold medal. But can you remember what that feeling was like, or what these players talked about?
Well, I remember vividly in the next game against Finland, Sunday morning in Lake Placid, they were down 2-1 end of the second period. And that's the famous Herb Brooks quote before they took the ice in the third period. If you lose this game, you'll take it to your effing grave. And he said it again. And the boys basically said Herb Brooks never swore, but that was the one time he swore. And if you think about something that rang so true, if those guys had gone through the rest of their lives and had lost the game to Finland, people would go, now let me get this straight. You beat the Soviets and you lost to Finland? So, they came back and won the game, they had to kill a penalty toward the end of the third period, leading 3-2, and got a shorthanded goal. So that was gigantic. People, forget, in those years, it wasn't like it is now where you have a semifinal game and then the final. They had a round robin. We played the Soviets on Friday, Finland on Sunday, and here we go, 46 years later.
But what would that have done to your call if they don't win the gold medal?
Do you believe in debacles? I think that's what the Soviet announcer must have said at the end of the Friday night game. Oh my God! Oh, think about that. I don't even want to think about that. None of those guys do. Oh, that would have been just horrendous.
Yeah,
horrendous.
Yeah. Did you have a backup call for "Do You Believe in Miracles"?
No.
Okay.
Dan, I walked over to the arena with the great late Ken Dryden that day, and I said to him, Kenny, we can only hope to keep an audience that the game is something like 3-1, no worse than 3-1, middle of the second period. Otherwise, knowing Roone Arledge running ABC Sports in those days, he would have brought you, women's ordinals or something, or ski flying or something, or ski jumping. They would have cut away from our game. So there was no chance the U.S. could win that game. None. Kenny and I had been out to the Soviet Union. He played against them. We saw them. We weren't a match for them. So when that game, is 1-1, 2-2, 3-2 Soviets, then we get a tying goal. Then Eruzione scores at the 10-minute mark of the. Now it's like, whoa. So I'm not thinking about anything to say at the end of the game, because this is so crazy. This can't be happening. But at the end of the game, remember, the Soviets were putting intense pressure on the U.S., and I'm just calling the game, because that game could have ended with a goal by the Soviets or a great save by Jim Cray. So I don't have, in my mind, I can't think of something to say, because I'm going to call that game right to the very end. And I got very lucky when the puck came out to center ice with about 5 seconds to play. And now I knew the Soviets couldn't mount another attack. And the word that came into my head was miraculous. It got morphed into a question and an answer. I had no idea of the impact of what I said, or even what I said at the end of the game. I was working in such an intense state of concentration, but here we are. It's, I guess it put a pretty good coat on the game.
Did you ever hear the Soviets call?
Well, that might have been the debacle call. No, I never heard that call. No.
Yeah, I haven't either. I'm curious, though, how that, because of the importance of hockey, and you're a hockey power, And,
Sure.
people pay a price in some of these countries when they disappoint. And I'd be curious how the Russian announcer called that.
I think he had to be stunned. First of all, they never lost. So people also forget that the Soviets, down by a goal and putting the pressure on in the American end, never even pulled the goalie because they probably never practiced it.
Oh, well.
They don't lose.
Yeah.
So they could have had a 6-on-5 at the end of the game. But you know what, Dan, so many things I'm thinking about this morning too. So when I'm a kid in the 50s and 60s in New York, and I loved the Rangers, and in the NHL in those years, there were like 2 or 3 or 4 guys born in America. And in 1980, I think I looked it up, there were like 8% of the rosters were American born. Now it's 30%. So what 80 did, and I think what yesterday did, is it makes kids more excited. More kids are going to play hockey now because of what took place yesterday. Wow, look at this. And they play it all around the country now. And again, when I was a kid, the number one draft choice in the NHL would always be a kid born in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, or in northern Manitoba. But one of the seminal moments to me was the American captain, Austin Matthews, who was drafted number 1 by the Toronto Maple Leafs about 10 years ago, and played extremely well in the Olympics. Austin Matthews grew up in Scottsdale, Arizona. Not Moose. It's a long way from Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. So that's where the sport of hockey is coming. It's great.
And maybe it's kind of like what happened with the Dream Team in 1992. Look what it did for basketball internationally. Look at the stars in the NBA, so many of them from other countries. Now, people have been playing hockey here for a long time, and there's a difference between growing up and playing basketball and playing hockey in that you can go to the park with a ball and play all day for free. Hockey's very expensive. The equipment, the travel, the rink time, all those things that go into it. And the accessibility to everyone is not there. Even people who are middle class, they would have a lot of trouble paying for these things. My son had a couple of friends growing up who played pretty high-level hockey, and one of them actually got drafted by the Montreal Canadiens. And every weekend they were going off to play in these various tournaments. Sometimes they would have to fly to them, and their parents had the resources to be able to do that. But to be able to get to the NHL from Scottsdale, Arizona, or where my kids grew up, Rockville, Maryland, it's going to take some resources and some time and energy from the parents, not just the money, but getting them to the rink at 5 a.m. when it's available, So that's going to be a longer putt, I should say. Kind of like we heard this about golf, that after Tiger Woods emerged, and it's now almost 30 years since that happened, that there would now be so many new African-American golfers, and there just hasn't been. It hasn't had that effect yet. Maybe it never will. But like hockey, golf takes a lot of money, and not every kid can afford that. Even the public courses, and you need instruction. It takes a lot of lessons. Tiger was fortunate that he had his dad, who was retired from the military, who worked with him every single day, and he loved it. He embraced it. That combination of the two things is not always there, and more difficult to accomplish. Here's the state of boxing. Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao are set to meet September 19th at the Sphere in Las Vegas. This is going to be streamed on Netflix. I don't know whether I have Netflix. I don't know whether I have to pay another level of pay-per-view on that. But okay, we're gonna have a fight. You do realize this? They fought once before, almost 11 years ago, May 2nd of 2015. So by the time they get back in the ring, it will have been 11 and a half years since they fought. That fight did very, very well. When they met in 2015, 4.6 million pay-per-view, $410 million in revenue. It broke gate records with $72 million in ticket sales. But Floyd Mayweather is turning 49 today. He retired from boxing at the age of 40 in 2017 after he knocked out MMA star Conor McGregor. Manny Pacquiao is 47 years old. He's got a bad shoulder, initially retired from boxing following his 2021 loss to Yordanis Ugas, but returned in 2025. Just had a recent fight, I guess. But, used to be, I've said this many times, that the biggest sporting event of my lifetime, and boy, we should celebrate the anniversary of it. It's coming up again. This would be, 56 years? Wow, 55 years since Ali Frazier won, March 8th of 1971. Boxing was it. When you had an Ali fight and nothing bigger than the 3 Ali Frazier fights, and Frazier fighting Foreman, down goes Frazier, down goes Frazier. Huge, huge. Now, this fight will not have the opportunity. Oh, here it is. So I won't have to pay another level. It won't have the opportunity to break pay-per-view records since it'll be on Netflix, but it'll be available globally to over 325 million subscribers. It's probably going to be really late at night. See if I can stay up for it if I want to. The 2024 fight between Jake Paul and Mike Tyson was the first that Netflix did. That drew 108 million people globally. Again, and for what I heard of the fight, I didn't see any of it, but it's like they played patty cake. Tyson's close to 60 now. So Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao, combined age 96, guy gesund. And it's more, I think, of an indictment of where we are in the boxing world, that you just can't gin up a fight that gets any kind of interest because you don't have names. These are 2 of the names that are still, something that people can latch on to, but they're old men. 49 and 47. Yeah, I mean that's I don't even know if you can make it through a fight sitting down. You have to get up and pish at some point. Wow, crazy. All right, coming up, this was interesting yesterday as John Keim, he does a podcast once a week or every couple of weeks, and he had on Ryan Porter. Who's Ryan Porter? Ryan Porter has been the quarterback guru for Jayden Daniels since he was 11 years old, since Daniels was 11 years old. So what is he, 25 now? So 14 years. He's taken him all the way through high school. He was a starter as a freshman. And then the 5 years he played in college at Arizona State and at LSU. And then the 2 years he's played now with the Commanders. And he's got to have a bounce-back year. Porter will explain why this should not be a concern, why he's been there, done that with Jayden, and he's sure that he will bounce back in 2026. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
One of the things we didn't talk about in the passing of Sonny Jurgensen earlier this month is his sons. He's got, I believe he left 4 sons behind. I know one a little bit through Facebook, and his name is Gunnar. And I don't know whether Gunnar played college football. I don't think he did. I know he didn't play in the NFL. And as far as high school, if he played, I'm not even sure he was a quarterback. But it would seem that when Sonny named his son Gunnar, there was some thought that he might follow in his footsteps and be a quarterback. Well, maybe that was the thinking of Phillip Rivers, who has a son named Gunnar, who's a junior in high school. He'll be a senior at Fairhope, Alabama, St. Michael next year with his dad, I guess, coming back as the coach. But you never rule anything out. Maybe somebody's going to sign him as a quarterback based on what he did at the end of the season for the Colts. He is going to be, 46 at the start of the season, going on 46? So I don't know. But Gunnar Rivers has signed. And this is a lot of pressure. He's going to go to NC State. NC State is not the highest profile football school, but his father goes down as one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play there. Roman Gabriel also played at NC State. They may have produced a couple of others along the way. But Gunnar Rivers, who has the last name that's legendary at NC State and a first name that suggests he's going to be a great quarterback, is going to take on that load, signing a letter of intent to play at NC State. He had offers from Auburn, Boston College, Miami, and South Carolina. Now, it's possible he's a 4-star recruit, and his senior year, he just blows everything away, and the recruitment starts again. And I don't even know about the money situation, since Dad has plenty of cash, I would assume, having played as long as he did in the NFL and picked up a nice check for the end of last season with the Colts. Plus, reset the clock on health care for his family. Got 10 kids. For the next 5 years, he gets free health care. So, maybe there's a financial incentive not to look elsewhere. But whatever, he's at this point committed to go to NC State, and I just wonder about that because as soon as he takes the field, people are going, Rivers, not as good as his dad. Now, it's possible that he will start as a true freshman, which would be the 2027 season. The starter is C.J. Bailey. He has 2 years left of eligibility, but could leave early for the NFL draft. Or if Gunnar Rivers, they think, is that good, then C.J. Bailey will do what a lot of quarterbacks do these days and pick up a big payday to go play someplace else and open the door for the kid. But that's a long way off. I would just say to the Rivers family and to Dad, I'm sure he understood this when he named his son that and helped him to become a quarterback. That's quite a legacy to uphold. Last name Rivers, first name Gunnar. Oh, well, let's see if he is. Ryan Porter is probably not a name you're familiar with. Ryan Porter has been the quarterback guru, I guess you'd call him a coach, personal coach, for Jayden Daniels since he was 11 years old. For nearly, 15 years now, he's been working with him at every step of the way. Daniels was a starter as a freshman in high school, went off to play 3 years at Arizona State, started 2 years at LSU and got the Heisman Trophy, number 2 pick of the draft, got the Commanders to the NFC Championship game, and then last year was hurt all the time, and you can just kind of throw that away. This is not something that you heard a lot of because people, I think, gave Dan Quinn the benefit of the doubt for what happened in the 2024 season. But it was coaching malpractice in the eyes of many to put him out there with the rest of the team banged up, especially in the game that he had the injury that ended his season, the dislocated elbow, game that was out of hand. He should have simply handed off if he was still in the game. More importantly, why the hell was he still in the game? And Ryan Porter was on with John Keim yesterday on John Keim's podcast and said what a lot of people were thinking. This isn't, I don't think, headline stuff, but this is second guessing from his quarterback coach.
Honestly, I probably would have shut him down a lot quicker. A lot of he needs to get reps. Does he? Does he really need to get reps? I mean, he played all the way to the NFC Championship game last year. At this point, you're just kind of putting him out on the field and put him in the line of fire. You're just waiting for something catastrophic to happen now, right? It's okay. This is your franchise quarterback for the next 20 years. You know what I mean? If he's blessed to play that long, there's no need to go out there and take an injury like Ertz took. You know what I mean, or something like that. You don't want to do that. It's okay. You guys were never in the playoff run at all this year. You know what I mean? And so, let's protect our assets, right?
Pretty serious second guess, I would say. I think Dan Quinn might be prone to agree with him. Remember when Daniels got hurt right after the game, Quinn was asked about it, and I think he said something to the effect, yeah, we were thinking about taking him out, but we didn't. Or the indication was it was still some sliver of hope they could win the game. Not really. And he did apologize for it later and said that he screwed up. He made the mistake. But, had he not played him in that point in the game, could he have gotten hurt in another game? I mean, it was just kind of that year. He played only 7 games, and I think he had 3 different injuries along the way. And not that he's had necessarily a year like this while he was in high school or college, but Porter says it's been pretty much a pattern with him that he will have a bad year after a good year. Not necessarily, what happened where he won the Heisman at LSU and then comes here and leads them to the NFC Championship game and is the Rookie of the Year. But he says he's been there, done that in terms of rebounding from bad years.
It seems to be every second year for whatever reason, like a sophomore year of high school, second year in college. He responds extremely well. He's always bounced back. He never allows it to control the narrative, which I think the beauty of who Jayden is as a person and as a competitor on and off the field is it's a great motivator for him to come back, work harder, I think a lot of athletes have never endured or had to embrace that adversity on the field or off the field. So the first time they experience it, a lot of times is in, when it's the stakes are at its highest in the NFL or big time level college football, and so they don't really know how to handle it. Or the programs that they're in, right? The teams or the media around them don't give them the time to rebound, from that kind of stuff, right? So it's a what have you done for me lately type of league, right? And just environment. So what I've seen from Jayden is he responds quick. So and that adversity, it just sparks a different flame in him, and he bounces back, really really quick
So,
for that.
and one of the things that he said at the end of the year is like, well, people have told him that the great ones go through this adversity. He's like, I'm not saying I'm great, but this is what his coaches tell him, that you go through this adversity. And he's even said like, hey, I can come out, sometimes you need some adversity. How, like with him, I'm going to guess that he's motivated one way, or I know he's motivated one way or another, right? He's not someone who necessarily needs it, but what can it do to him? Like, how did you see it drive him, sophomore year? I think it was his sophomore year in high school or junior year.
Sophomore.
Okay, so how did you see it push him then? Like, what things happened, and then what things did you see from him when he came back from that year?
Honestly, I'll be honest with you, John. I don't think it matters if he was coming off a Super Bowl victory or
Right.
if he was coming off the worst season that he's ever had. Whether that's he's responsible for, I think he still has the same consistent approach for everything. You know what I mean? So, he drowns out all the negative noise. Whether it be, negative noise from the media or maybe from some of his peers or whatever that is. We understand what the mission is. I got to get better so I can be, the best piece of the puzzle for my team. That's it. You know what I mean? It's that mindset of a satisfied man is a failure. If I'm satisfied, right, then I'm going to get content. I'm going to get lazy, right? So it doesn't matter if I'm coming off a Super Bowl victory, right, a Rookie of the Year, NFL MVP, or if I'm came off a season where my team was part of the struggle bus, right? It's going to be the same approach, to be honest with you, and yeah, I don't know if it really changes his approach. And I guess like when you struggle, your team struggles a little bit, and you didn't have the success after having such a big year like you did your rookie season. You're going to hear a lot of the naysayers. That kind of stuff just excites him. Like, okay, it puts a little chip on his shoulder. But you're not going to know that unless you know Jayden. Like you're not going to know that kind of like fires him up a little bit more. So you're lighting a flame, man. That's almost like it's very Jordan like and Kobe like. Like, do you want to do that? Like, do you really want to poke the bear? You know what I mean? Because you're poking a bear that you don't want to poke.
And Jayden has said many times that his favorite athlete of all time is Kobe. He believes in the Mamba mindset. So that should be helpful as he sets his mind to come back this year. Last thing from Ryan Porter, who has been the quarterback guru for Jayden Daniels for a long, long time, since he was 11 years old. We've heard it from Dan Quinn, that they are going to run a lot more plays under center this year. David Blau, the quarterback's coach, is moving up to offensive coordinator. That is part of the plan. That may seem like a big deal for a quarterback who's taken most of his snaps in the shotgun going back to high school, but Porter says it's really no big deal at all.
That's how we started with Jayden, is we taught everything from under center. I think that's what kind of separates my training from a lot of the other trainers. And I'm not speaking for everybody, but I'm just saying we've always started from, the stance from underneath the center, how you take a snap, right? Your play action game, how you hand a football off, three-step drop from underneath. All it does, if you teach fundamentals from underneath, it just perfects your game when you're back in shotgun. That's it, right? Understanding how to throw a quick game from underneath. Understand how to throw, your flash five, your rhythm five, your big five, back out drops, how you're taking your three-step game to the left. It's more of a back out, right? Instead of turning to stay open, so closing yourself off. So we've taught that at a very, very young age. I mean, as he's been 11 years old. So everything that we've put in place for him has all been from under center. So it's not going to be so like we're throwing routes on airs when he's young, right? And let's just say we're starting with easy ups, and then we go right into our hitches, our slants, our speed outs. He'll go under center and throw a slant, three-step drop underneath, and go back and gun, right? And do slant left, right. And so he does everything by twos. So we've always done that. So like it's not nothing new for him.
So it's not new. Will you do a little bit more of that this offseason with him, just to kind of get for any reason, or just about the same?
Same, because it doesn't matter when he comes back. That's how we still operate, right? Because when you teach from underneath, like I said, all it does is just polishes and perfects your shotgun game. It just makes your shotgun game more like I mean, do you see any quarterbacks take as much of a flash 5 or a rhythm 5, gun 5 from shotgun than he does? Like there's nobody that I see do that, right? I was just talking about that with Kyle Trask today. As I mean, he was asking how he's throwing different routes, and I was like, try a flash 5 here, try a rhythm 5 here, or take a 3-no cross, right? So like Jayden's been taught all that. He does that, so this is going to be second nature for him.
So that's the outlook from Ryan Porter. You would expect something like that. I mean, he's been his guy for a long, long time. He's not going to say, "Oh man, he's really got something to prove." Last year could be a sign of what's to come. He's going to get hurt all the time. He's got to learn to protect himself. Now he's going to give you a positive outlook, but this is a guy who knows him very well, and I think is looking out to make sure that he's going to be there for a long time. I mean, he's saying they really should have thrown in the towel earlier than they did last year. The good thing about last season was none of the injuries required surgery. So the offseason is not about rehab. It's about perfecting mechanics, working on things that will be more protective for him, and maybe running behind center is going to be better for that. Now, he's got new people completely. It's now not just that Cliff Kingsbury is gone. Kingsbury, by the way, becoming the assistant head coach under Sean McVay with the Rams yesterday. But apparently he took with him Brian Johnson, who has been the passing game coordinator. Now, I don't really understand the game well enough to tell you how much these titles mean and so forth, but it does seem like this is David Blau's ball game. David Blau, very young guy. He's never come close to this level of coaching before. He's only a few years removed from being a backup quarterback. We'll see what happens here. But the what was in place here for the first 2 years for Jayden Daniels is not there now. And you are going to have an inexperienced offensive coordinator. Cliff Kingsbury was a real get because he had been a head coach before as well as a very successful offensive coordinator and, kind of an innovator in the passing game and probably was in a big part responsible for the success that Jayden had as a rookie. Now, I do think that the change was made because they looked at it like, gee, I don't know if this is sustainable. We're running this quick offense all the time. We're not running more plays because of the no huddle. Is this the best way to protect our long-term asset here? And maybe that there was a butting of the heads there. Kingsbury is no young kid. He's been a head coach before, and maybe he and Quinn couldn't come to a compromise on it, so they moved on. But this is David Blau's ball game here. And when you take away a passing game coordinator, for whatever that title means, that's another layer of coaching that Jayden has had for 2 years that he's familiar with that's gone. And whether Blau can take up the slack, we've seen it go both ways, right? And youth doesn't have that much to do with it. Sean McVay clearly was ready to become a head coach when he moved on to the Rams at the age of 30. And now that he's 40 years old, he's already got a Super Bowl championship and 2 Super Bowl appearances and came pretty darn close with a lot of injuries this past year. So it may work out, but it's just another example of how they're throwing their chips in the middle for an inexperienced offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator who's never been a defensive coordinator at the NFL level before either. So it's the seat heats up quickly. 2 years removed from an appearance in the NFC Championship game, a shocking appearance in the NFC Championship game. Dan Quinn goes into 2026 very much on the hot seat with something to prove with inexperienced people around him. Crazy. Coming up, Army-Navy game. A standalone game? Maybe, maybe not. It's the Andy Poland Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Poland Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Marcus Mariota is not signed for the Commanders. I would assume that if he's interested in coming back, they're interested in having him back, but it's not a slam dunk. And there are contract negotiations that you go through. No surprise here, but according to Adam Schefter, Falcons GM Ian Cunningham told an Atlanta radio station today that the team plans to release Kirk Cousins on the first day of the league year, which is, 2 weeks from tomorrow, right? March 11th is 2 weeks from tomorrow. That's the first day they can do it. So Kirk Cousins' tenure in Atlanta is over after 2 years, a disastrous contract that he was signed to, something like $89 million guaranteed. And, it's different ownership here. I'm not saying that he would necessarily be a fit for what they want to do, and I'm sure he's going to explore options where he could possibly become a starter, maybe, compete for the job. Maybe there's maybe even Miami might be a place that he could go and start for a couple of years. But, wouldn't it be something? Because Mariota played in Atlanta. So I don't know if they necessarily want him back. But, a trade of sort of the same guy, not exactly. And Cousins is older, obviously. He was drafted in 2012. I think it was 2018 that Marcus Mariota was drafted. But still, it's the quarterback go around. And the thought of Kirk Cousins coming back here, and they wouldn't even have to make up a new jersey. Just put the different nameplate on it and come back and wear number 8 again and be the quarterback here. And number 8 would go to Atlanta, where I guess Mariota would have to wear another number since they just franchised the tight end who wears number 8. So I don't know. It's just this is the time of year for that. And again, we're going to hear more from Adam Peters today as he has a news conference with the Combine starting on Thursday in Indianapolis. I wonder if anybody would ask that. Would you have any interest in Kirk Cousins? I don't think he would say anything, and but he probably would leave the door open. I'm guessing. I don't know. Or they may look at Cousins at his age and say, "Nah, forget it. We're not doing that." And Cousins may not want to come back here, knowing that there's it's kind of like. Well, it's not like Penix, really. I mean, he was signed by Atlanta before they drafted Penix. So that was sort of a, whoa, what are they doing here? So that was not a surprise. I mean, we've known that, but now it's confirmed that and I guess they feel like Michael Penix can be ready to start the season, or they have somebody else that they'll bring in who they think can hold down the fort until Penix gets there. The other thing that's really interesting is what happened with the Seattle Seahawks. Is it possible that there's a thought in the league now that, hey, maybe we can find the next Sam Darnold? Maybe we don't have to, because Darnold was a real find in two ways. One, he was available. You didn't have to trade for him. He was released by the Vikings. And two, because he'd had such a terrible finish in his last two games, last regular season game and then the playoff game, that he was damaged goods and you didn't have to pay the top price. They got him in Seattle for like $33 million a year, which is, bargain basement. They're talking about Lamar Jackson restructuring his contract because there's like a balloon payment of like, $80 million or something that's due at the start of the year, that they'll redo his contract and make him a more reasonable $60 million a year. $60 million is the going rate for a top quarterback now. Yeah, I mean, if you can get Cousins in for, he's killing the market in terms of guaranteed money. He's made more money in his career than Tom Brady. But, if you could get him in at a reasonable deal, under $30 million to be your starting quarterback, why not? Man, what a time it is. Speaking of money, Kurt Cignetti, in 2 years, has gone from $600,000 a year, which probably put him in the low 200s, maybe around 200 of college coaches, to number 2. Did it in 2 years. He's now the number 2 paid coach in America, behind Kirby Smart of Georgia, barely behind Kirby Smart, who makes like $80,000 a year more. Maybe Kirby Smart had an escalator in his contract. But Kirby Smart is making $13.28 million. He's got 2 national titles. Cignetti has 1, and he's making $13.2 million. But it is more than $700,000 more than what Ryan Day makes at Ohio State. The difference between the Ohio State football program and the Indiana program just, 2 years ago, maybe 3, was night and day. It would be like the difference between, let's say, Howard's basketball program and Maryland's basketball program. Yeah, that's what it was like 2 years ago. I know they're in the same conference, but Indiana football, forget about it. It's a basketball school. Nobody cares. And Ryan Day now makes $700,000 a year less. He's got the same number of titles as Curt Cignetti. He doesn't have an undefeated season, doesn't have a 16-0 season, but Indiana is saying, I don't care. I don't care what offers are out there. We're going to match them. We're going to beat them. And we're going to keep Curt Cignetti around. He's got a contract, I think, through 2033 when he will be in his 70s, maybe 72, 73 years old. Amazing. Lincoln Riley of USC. Now, he's overpaid. He's making 11.5. Dabo Swinney, he's got a national title, $11.4 million. And Steve Sarkisian of Texas, $10.8 million. Those are your top 6 coaches. And to think that, Texas has had the biggest athletic budget in the country. I believe they're right there with Ohio State. They're getting away with paying their coach almost $3 million a year less than Steve Sarkisian. Well, Sarkisian hasn't delivered a national championship yet, but wow, that's a nice. It's good to be Cignetti right now. And I'll say this, when he was making $600,000 a year, it wasn't like he was hurting. But there's a different level of living when you're making 13.28 and you're living in Bloomington, Indiana. I mean, the cost of living there has got to be incredibly low. And I mean, if you buy the biggest house in Bloomington, what is that? A couple $1 million, $3 million? Amazing. He's got kids, and they're going to be set up for life, and their kids are going to be set up for life. It's great. And I think at least 1 or 2 of his daughters went to medical school. I don't know if they practice medicine or whatever, but that's pretty amazing. The Army-Navy game. When I was growing up, it seemed like it was Thanksgiving weekend, and now it has been a standalone game for nearly 20 years. I think 2008 was the first time that they moved it to where it is now. And here's the problem that college football is having. Well, two things. One, we've already had the playoff expanded to 12. It's not going to be long before it gets to 16 and eventually 24. And you got to cram in all these playoff games in a period of time where, you're not tickling the Super Bowl, which is where they are right now. They got it to the 19th of January this time, partly because Army-Navy took that entire weekend in early December. So you couldn't start rolling with these playoff games until the following week. Well, because Labor Day was so early this year, 1st or 2nd of September this past year, you pushed it to the 19th. Well, it gets moved up this year, obviously, and now they're scheduling the national championship game for January 25th. January 25th is when Super Bowls were played, when they went to 16 games. When it was 14 games, they did it in the middle of January. When they expanded to 16, we started having games as late as January 25th. Now, of course, they're in mid-February, and once they get to 18 games, it's almost certain that it's going to be on President's Day weekend. But the next 2 years, January 25th and 24th, and Jeff Monken, that's Todd Monken's his brother, Jeff Monken, the Army coach, is saying, this just pushes it too late in the year. We're too much up against the NFL. So he's pretty much volunteering that the Army-Navy game go back to Thanksgiving weekend. And the time to do it would be that Friday, the Black Friday. The problem is the NFL is gobbling that up. They've already put one game on there. That's the Black Friday game on Prime. The NFL's got more games to sell to streaming, so they're probably going to put another game, maybe 2 more games on that Friday. And I guess the thing to do would be to start it at noon. Play it at noon on Thanksgiving weekend, the day after Thanksgiving, and then it clears out in time for the NFL. At least it would be a standalone college game. Now, Trump has stuck his nose into this, and he said he planned to sign an executive order which would prevent any football games from going head-to-head with the Army-Navy game. They had another bowl game that was played this past year, and it's gone out of business, the L.A. Bowl, so that really wasn't, a big deterrent for it. But Monken said, quote, "I think Army-Navy is a huge part of the history of college football and what it is today. Given a 4-hour block on Thanksgiving or on Friday of Thanksgiving or Saturday of Thanksgiving, give us a 4-hour block and say nobody else plays during this block. That's still protecting the game." I think that makes sense. I think, again, you started at noon, and then you start the first Black Friday game at 4:30, say, 4:30 in the afternoon, and then you play another one at night. That's probably what's going to happen. This series began in 1890, and it's been held every year since 1930. And CBS has had the rights since 1996, 30 years, and they have a deal to keep it on through 2038. This year, it's December 12th, MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, part of the commemoration of 9/11, the 25th anniversary. You probably have heard the story about the Army-Navy game in 1963 being postponed after the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Kennedy was killed on a Friday. The Army-Navy game was supposed to take place the next day in Philadelphia. They postponed it for 2 weeks, and that was probably the latest it was ever held in December. But that was the time it was played. It was played on that weekend, either, I guess, before Thanksgiving, sometimes on the Friday of Thanksgiving weekend. And that's when college football season used to end. It used to take almost a whole month before the bowl games would start. And the reason that they would take the whole month, it's a quaint notion now, it was because of exams. Oh, yeah, got to go to school, got to take those final exams in early December, can't be playing football. And, you want to go home for Christmas, right? Give a little bit of a break. But now there's just too much money in television. And as a matter of fact, that Army-Navy game in 1963 was supposed to be the debut of instant replay. And it just happened 2 weeks later. Believe it or not, the NFL had no instant replay in 1963, as late as 1963. And the Army-Navy game was the first time, and boy, they had to bring a separate truck to do it, and they had to have big tape playback machines, and Lindsey Nelson had to warn the audience, no, this is not a new play. This is a play that has already taken place. And it was, in fact, that Army-Navy game when the year Roger Staubach won the Heisman Trophy that they did it. That they did the first instant replay. So I would be in favor of this. I think it makes the most sense, and it's great that it's a standalone game, America's game. But the train is rolling down the tracks. The money train is just gobbling it up. And I agree with Monken. You can't have these national championship games in late January. Ideally, I'd like to see them play January 1st. But, when you're tickling February for a game that begins with regular season games in college football late August, just doesn't make any sense. All right, coming up, we will get to what Louis Riddick said about the search for the next Sam Darnold. It's the Andy Poland Show, ESPN 630. Yes, I know we're almost out of February, but realistically, the college basketball season is just starting. The NFL has gobbled it up so that when we look up and we go, who's good? I don't know. I wasn't paying attention. Oh, Maryland's really bad? Yeah, well, it's one of those years. Let's see what they can do next year. Georgetown's supposed to be good by now. Third year for Ed Cooley. Nah, they're still not good. But around the country, Michigan looks really good. But Duke beat them. And what about Kansas? Kansas, big win last night over Houston. So we're gearing up for what is essentially the college basketball season. 3 weeks in March, and right now it's just really jockeying for position. We got Selection Sunday coming up in, couple of weeks? I think it might be 2 weeks from Sunday, I think. It's such a different sport now because the players change. If you watch a game, you may know one or two players. The continuity certainly isn't there. There's a Boozer playing at Duke, but it's the son of Carlos Boozer. It's Cam Boozer, and he's better than Carlos. And he may be the number one pick of the draft. It's a wild, wild world, and the days of watching a star player for 4 years at the same school. Shane Battier is not walking through that door. J.J. Redick's not walking through that door anymore. Those days are over. Even the days, back in the I consider them the glory days. You got Bill Walton for 3 years, 3 years. And he was ineligible as a freshman. And then you had freshman eligibility, and all of a sudden here comes a guy like Phil Ford, who's a great point guard at North Carolina. I believe he had some alcohol problems, which kind of derailed his NBA career. He might have been one of the great point guards ever. What a talent he was in college. But North Carolina was on TV all the time. It seemed like Phil Ford was there for 10 years. And now it's wasn't he at Clemson last year? Yeah, I think so. Oh, wasn't he like West Virginia 2 years before that? Yeah, that's kind of the way it works. Anyway, Combine is starting on Thursday in Indianapolis, and we'll hear from Adam Peters and Dan Quinn today what they're looking for. They're not going to reveal much, but the big need is obviously defense, and there's some edge rushers that are going to be available near the top of the draft. Commanders are picking 7th. Will they trade down? It might be a deep enough draft where it makes sense to do that, although I don't know if they trade out of 7. And, usually when you're trading that high in the draft, it's a quarterback-desperate team. There just aren't enough quarterbacks to go around. Outside of Fernando Mendoza, it's not a good quarterback draft, so I don't know if anybody's going to really want to jump up to do that. So more than likely they're going to keep the pick, but we'll get some more answers on that today. Meantime, Louis Riddick was on the Rich Eisen show yesterday. Rich Eisen show heard here daily from 12 to 3. Riddick, I think, is one of the really good evaluators of talent. He was the one who said 2 years ago that if he was picking for the Bears, that he would have taken Jayden Daniels and not Caleb Williams. Now, Caleb Williams had a great year this past year, and they may be the two great quarterbacks of the future, assuming that, Jayden can rebound from last year. But he went to all the pro days. He's a former front office executive here and I believe Philadelphia, and his name has come up a number of times over the years for jobs as general manager. Either the offer wasn't right or there really wasn't, that much interest beyond the first couple of interviews because he hasn't landed a job and he hasn't really said he's pursuing one. He's doing TV. He does color for college games and he's done some pro games as well. And more importantly, he's a really good analyst for securing talent, knows the front office game, having worked in the front office of 2 NFL teams, played in the NFL. And they were talking about, what is going to probably be a trend now. It's a copycat league. And I'm sure owners are sitting down with their front office people and saying, look what Seattle did here. Look, they built a really good defense and they built a really good team around Sam Darnold. And they looked at Darnold, who'd been cast aside by, I think, 3 different teams, and they said, we think there's something there. We can get him at a good price. And what do you know? They just won the Super Bowl. So now the search is on for the next Darnold. Now, Malik Willis seems to be the leader in the clubhouse for that. He's the Green Bay backup. The feeling is that when he has played very well and would be perfect to slide into a spot that may be open in the NFL. I would warn you about this, and it's the same team. Matt Flynn was a guy who was a backup for Aaron Rodgers, and when the Seattle Seahawks were looking for a quarterback, this is the year that they drafted Russell Wilson. They got Wilson in the 3rd round. They didn't know he was going to be that good. They signed Matt Flynn to a sizable contract for the time. And they still drafted Russell Wilson in the 3rd round, figuring he would develop under the veteran Matt Flynn. And he beat him out in training camp, and we pretty much never heard from Flynn again. So if you're going to go after Malik Willis, who has played more than Flynn did, to be fair, but if you are going to bring him in, you run that risk. But this was Riddick explaining to Eisen that this was not just a blind find here in Sam Darnold, that he had heard from someone who was very well connected to quarterbacks. Jordan Palmer, that's Carson Palmer's brother, who had kind of a cup of coffee in the NFL, but has become something of a quarterback guru. And this is a conversation that that Riddick had with Palmer several years ago.
Jordan Palmer got me in the airport coming back from the Senior Bowl and said, Lewis, Sam, and this was at the time when Sam was getting ready to sign with San Francisco. And he said, Sam just needs to be in that kind of system around that environment and with those coaches, and you're going to see him wash all of the stench off of him that happened early on in his career, and he's going to hit his stride. It may not happen in San Fran, but that's the system he needs. Kyle is who he needs. Clint Kubiak, those kind of guys are who he needs. He goes there, doesn't start. Minnesota takes a chance. He wins. He's able to get in there, obviously because JJ gets hurt. And next thing you know, him and KOC are ripping it up. Ripping it up. He has a couple bad games at the end of the year. People go, maybe it's not true. John Snyder goes, you know what? I believe what I saw. I believe that the system matches the quarterback. I'm going to take a chance on him. I'm going to bring him in. I'm going to bring in Clint Kubiak. I'm going to have him with Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. I'm going to build out this young offensive line. We're going to be run heavy, play action, and it's going to work. And I'll be damned if it doesn't work. See, it's so those kind of things, like the marriage, quarterback, play caller, a head coach like Mike McDonald, who's a master right now, who talk to guys like Sean McVay. McVay says McDonald's like the best in the league right now. All the great coordinators, he might be the best out there. The guy is a savant. The dude is like a wonder kid. A lot of great things. Look, you can try and copy what Seattle did. You got a lot of work to do because they've been putting this together for a little bit, and you've got to just tip your cap to what John has done. You just do, man. He made all the right moves, and he's been doing it for about 2-3 years, and then it culminated in that Super Bowl.
No doubt. No doubt. Talk about zagging when everyone's zigging. You don't get, and the Raiders rightfully go ahead and get Clint Kubiak and want to hook him up to the first overall selected quarterback. I understand we just saw what Ben Johnson has been able to affect in just year one with Caleb Williams in Chicago. And I understand that you want to have your head coach be the play caller because you're not going to lose him, as Mike McDonald just did, to a head coaching job, you know, when he's already your head coach. So I understand that. But John Schneider zagged and says, you know what? I got McVay. I got Shanahan. I'm going to get a defensive guy, and I'm going to build it the way that we normally build it around here, and I'm going to try and win a Super Bowl. And they add Sam Darnold. You're right, Lewis. I mean, like, it is fascinating to talk about, and I love chopping ball up with you. So let's keep going here. Who is the next Sam Darnold? If you could peg one, look around the rest of the league and say this guy is the one where you want to talk about copycat. Boy, is it tough to say, you know what, I'm gonna get a guy on his fifth team who's finally coming into his own after being drafted high. Who do you think is the best person in the league right now that somebody could go get, if not this year, maybe next, to say, let's build the team like Seattle and go get our guy and insert him? Who's that guy?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, obviously there's always gonna be, well, there already is talk, about is Malik Willis the guy who is going to be the next superstar, as long as you hook him up with an offensive coordinator that he gels with personally, a system that really, he is very comfortable with. You get him a strong running game. Look, obviously, the Packers system, the Sean McVay system, the Kyle Shanahan system is obviously something that he has taken to and something that he has excelled in. So that's obviously something you want to get him a play caller and or head coach who's a disciple of that system so he can hit the ground running. He doesn't have a whole bunch of new learning to do. I think, I don't know if he's necessarily, look, he's had his opportunity, he's had opportunities, but he's not the guy who people look down upon the same way they look down upon, like a Sam Darnold or Baker Mayfield at one point in time in his career. Malik hasn't really had that one opportunity that was set up for him where he was given the keys to the organization and they were saying, and they just told him, hey, look, you just go and you just take it now. We're throwing all our resources behind you. But if you do that for him, I think he could be that kind of guy who maybe next thing you know, and I don't know if people would be so shocked by it because we've all seen glimpses of what he can do. But I think he may be, the guy who right now people are looking at in that regard. Look, if it wasn't for And I know, in the past, I've been a huge Tua Tagovailoa supporter. Okay, and I saw Tua at his height, in his prime, when Mike first took over down there in Miami, and those two really hit it off from a personal perspective. And then when Jayden and Tyreek were both healthy, what that offense could really look like when it was really clicking, and how Tua could really play, and the accuracy he could throw the football with, the decision making he could throw the football, the timing, the precision, the anticipation. I don't know if those days are long gone. Maybe they are. Maybe they're long gone because of a number of different reasons. One, he can't stay on maybe it's durability issues. Maybe people don't trust him anymore. I don't know. But he's a guy who also, I don't know if he has a second act in him. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. We'll see how this offseason plays out for him. But he's a guy who I don't want to just throw in the towel on, because I've seen him play some really high level football. But I think Malik is probably the guy who around the league right now really gets people kind of sit up in their chair and go, that would be an interesting guy to get a hold of.
Yeah, that's the latest and the greatest, and the unknown is sometimes better than the known. Tua has played some great football, but he's also had a lot of concussions. So if you're going to invest in him, you got to be aware of that. Miami's on the hook for a lot of money. I guess there's an escape hatch for them. We heard today from Adam Schefter that Kirk Cousins is going to be released on March 11th, which is the first day that they can do that. And he's going to be out there. So there's going to be quarterbacks available. And if you think you got the next Sam Darnold, by all means, go for it. But doesn't mean it's necessarily going to happen. Also, the Chiefs, do they have a last hurrah in them, at least with this group? Now, I think, the quarterback's going to be around for a long, long time. He may have another 10, 12 years left in his career, but some of the pieces around him, Patrick Mahomes, could be changing. And one of the questions about this team going into the year is, what's the deal with Travis Kelce? Is he going to play another year? I mean, he's got so many things going on now in his life, including an upcoming nuptials to Taylor Swift, not to mention a podcast that he does with his brother that makes like $100 million, and he's got, I'm sure, some acting offers. He was very good when he hosted Saturday Night Live, so he's got things to do. But you only get one more shot. If he decides he's not going to play football this year and then changes his mind a year later, I don't know if he can necessarily come back. Though Jason Witten did it. So, and I think it was about the same age. Jason Witten went to Monday Night Football after playing approximately the same amount of time in Dallas that Kelce has played in Kansas City, was horrendous on Monday Night Football. I mean, he was brutally bad. Went back and played another year with the Cowboys and then played another year with the Raiders, retired and became a high school coach, which is what he's doing now. And he may find his way into the NFL eventually as a coach, but he's terrible on TV. Kelce is not. Kelce's really good on television, and will probably find his way to become maybe even an actor, or to continue to do. Maybe he'll be a game analyst. His brother's already doing. I think he's better than his brother, and I think as a higher profile guy too. With the Taylor Swift connection. Although the brother, got to give the brother credit. Nice, very attractive wife, and she's talented too. But they've made it as a celebrity couple as well. Anyway, as far as the football goes, at his age, even though he's been productive still, Mike Tannenbaum, former front office executive, ran the Jets, ran the Dolphins. He's a regular on our morning show on Sportsmanlike, and said yesterday about the possibility, if he were the GM, of bringing Travis Kelce back.
When you run a team, sometimes you have to make the honest and sober calculation of paying a player for what they're going to do, not what they've done. He's a first-ballot Hall of Famer, all-time great, but he's 37. When you look at the draft, be it Kenyon Sadiq, Max Clare of Ohio State, Michael Trigg, amongst others, you look at the best tight ends in the game, guys. They're young. Laporta, Pitts. It's a young man's position, and he's a great player, but you have to be disciplined and say, like, what is he going to do next year? And he's still productive because he's so good. But if I was Kansas City, I would make the tough decision, but the right one for the organization. Thank him, retire his number at the appropriate time, and move on.
Yeah, that's the way it's done. A year early rather than a year too late. If I don't think they would go through the public drama of taking a player like that and saying, I know you want to play, but we're not going to offer you a contract to play. I don't know. But I would think that it's probably over for Travis Kelce in Kansas City, and probably makes sense for both sides. You don't want to go through a year where it's, the old cliche, Willie Mays falling down in the outfield. Not that he was ever Willie Mays, but he's a Hall of Fame tight end. He's one of the greatest to ever play the position. And the ugliness of slogging through a year where he doesn't have it anymore. And he's got so much else going on in his life. You can say, I'm committing myself to football. I want to win one more. We've talked about Lindsey Vonn. Why did Lindsey Vonn risk what she did, nearly losing her leg to try and get a medal, which was unrealistic on a torn ACL? She did it because this is it. She knew this was her last shot. And this would be the last shot for Kelce, but I think it makes sense to say sayonara. All right, that'll do it for me. I'll be back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.